Welcome everyone to the next episode of the Catributor podcast. And today's guest, Jingles, probably needs no introduction, but you want to introduce yourself regardless.
Yeah, howdy folks. I've been meaning to do this for some time, but other stuff always somehow managed to end up getting in the way. Obviously, YouTube, I have a Twitch channel, but I never use it. Tried streaming once, didn't like it much, never done it since. Currently taking a week off. The first time off I've had since Christmas, so 7 months between holidays. Picked the right week for it. It is sweltering out there. Hopefully, the air conditioner, I won't be making too much noise. I'm running NVIDIA broadcast, so AI noise reduction. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah, it all sounds good.
Yeah, I don't hear any air conditioner, so. So yeah, our first topic is the return of the Missouri, something that Wargaming just recently announced and has been met with a lot of face palms and chucklings, I think.
But to be fair, also, I think a lot of people are genuinely pleased to see it back just because it's the Missouri as in a ship that actually still exists.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I believe Jedi has a tale to tell about why the Missouri was originally removed for sale from Free XP.
Yeah, there was this question I asked going back 2 years. I'd honestly forgotten, but Painzor reminded me in the CC chat, and I asked Sub Octavian because he was still doing more direct community engagement back at that point. Why don't you just nerf the credit income and put it back in the game? And I think my specific suggestion was have the super duper credit printing ability tied to a camo that existing owners get to keep, and then new owners have a kind of reduced income. What they are instead doing is giving it a perma mission that will boost the credits, which has caused a little bit of confusion about it. But his answer at the time was it's not about the credits, it's about the battle influence that it has.
Turns out it was actually about the credits all along.
Pretty much. But I think I've been thinking about this, and maybe it's a confluence of both factors. The fact that people were taking it into battle so often for the credits that then there were more radars in play than they liked at the time.
And Wargaming care about there being a lot of radars in play now, do they? When did this start happening? I was thinking about that myself. It's not about the profit, it's about the battle influence. I don't remember. I mean, because that's why they took the Jean Bart away from the armor, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And the Musashi, because tier 9 and 10 battles was just Jean Barts and Musashis. That was definitely a thing. So, but that's not battle influence. That's not when somebody from Wargaming says battle influence, they're not talking about how many ships are in the matchmaker. Because does anybody seriously remember seeing entire, Missouri lineups on both teams? That was never a thing. When Wargaming say battle influence, they're talking about the influence that the ship has on the outcome of the battle. I don't know if you recall the presentation they gave at one of the community contributor summits, where they were showing battle influence. That was the specific term that they used. Battle influence of certain ship types and classes and so on, with obviously carriers having the biggest battle influence. So obviously they needed a bunch of buffs. Did the Missouri ever have battle influence? I don't recall anybody ever complaining about all the Missouris on the enemy team, and it was impossible to fight against them because they were just different Iowas with the radar. So it's not about the profits, it's about the battle influence. I'm calling bullshit on that one. It's quite clearly about the profits.
It does definitely make that statement look a lot more dubious in retrospect.
I mean, radar does have an influence, and I guess it depends what you compare it to. Like a Missouri definitely had more influence on the outcome than an Iowa. And it was basically like just a premium Iowa, a better Iowa for a premium, right?
Well,
but it was like
a battleship with a radar.
Is it worse heal? It's something like that. It's not quite as good in some ways. But,
it has its heal isn't quite as good. I think it's got slightly better nose armor. I can't remember, but that's the thing. It was never such an issue that people were going out and looking at the stats of the Missouri and trying to figure out how to beat it. it's a Missouri. You shoot at it and you beat it. It wasn't about how good a ship it was. It was about how much money it made. Obviously, regardless of what people try to insist was the reason. It's about its battle influence, not the profit. Well, then why are you reintroducing it without the profit? It doesn't make a lot of sense. Somebody's telling lies.
The sad part is that they're bringing her back for the balloons, right? They're not bringing her for a free currency, like free experience or code. They don't bring her back for something you can earn. They are like, hey, why don't you just give us cash? And we even take away the thing
more than one way.
I did wonder how much of this is like the Type 59 factor, and they've waited long enough. Then they're like, let's put that on sale. It's got kind of a reputation.
Yeah, it's got this. It achieved legendary status because it was the first free XP ship, wasn't it? The first one that you could get.
No,
free XP.
Nelson was the first, but that was I think that was the first tier 9.
No,
yeah, Nelson.
No.
I'm pretty sure.
Was
Nelson
it?
I'm sure Nelson was the first.
Because I'm sure I got the Nelson after I got the Missouri.
I have no idea.
Could be wrong. Easy enough to find out, but that's for a different time. It was the first tier 9, definitely.
Yeah, and it made insane credits, and still doesn't make insane credits compared to everything else.
But that was the reason why people wanted it, because you could take it out and make 1 million credits even if you didn't do very well. And that, of course, is that was what gave it its legendary status. I think you might have something there. It's got the aura of the Type 59 about it, even though the Type 59 was never a great tank. It certainly wasn't a bad tank. What made the Type 59 in World of Tanks the terror that it was because it had limited matchmaking, so it could only get... Could it even get into a tier 9 game?
I think it can. I think it was +1. It
was +1. Yeah, because that was preferential matchmaking. And everybody had them. And so it would be 5 Type 59s on one team, 5 Type 59s on the other team, and God help anybody who got in their way because they all drove around in wolf packs. All Type 59 drivers just stuck together. And I didn't care what tank you were in or how bad the Type 59's gun was. With 5 of them circling you at close range, you're dead. And the myth of the Type 59 grew when it wasn't actually that good a tank. And I think you've seen this. I think you're right. I think you've seen the same thing with the Missouri. It's certainly not a bad ship. Type 59 wasn't a bad tank, but it's not a great ship. And the only thing that was great about it was its ability to print money. That's why everyone called it the Trump wagon. And yeah, sure, it's being made available. You can buy it for real money, but it's not going to print money. It's not going to be. I mean, it'll have the same credit coefficient as any other premium ship, but it won't have the Missouri credit coefficient. That's what made the ship special.
Yeah, I wonder how many people will be fooled by that, because I see so many videos on YouTube and so many people talk about just how insane credits. And I mean, it's probably going to be in some fine print. I mean, it's in the announcement, but when they sell the Missouri, how big will the message be that the credit income has changed, I wonder?
How upfront about it will they be? How bold will the type be, as it were?
The information will be in there if you read the whole announcement. I'm not going to say nobody's going to fall for it, but I'll bet you some people will. But they won't try to hide the fact that it's not going to earn credits. The information will be there, and I certainly feel that it's our responsibility as community contributors to make sure that everybody is aware that it's not going to print credits like the old Missouri. But I'm sure that there'll be people out there who don't care, who just want it because it's the Missouri, and they'll get exactly what they want in that case. It's not a bad ship. It's a battleship with radar. I think it's still, because they were talking about putting weird radar on Russian battleships when they were in the testing phase. Do you remember that? That radar that would only detect other battleships.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing ever came of that, thank God.
It was basically the Cyclone consumable. It was overpowered in a Cyclone and useless elsewhere.
Yeah. But I think pretty sure to this day the Missouri is still the only battleship in the game that has radar. So it'll still have that.
Said that, Borodino is coming out quite soon. That's going to have
isn't there like the tier 8 that was recently released? How was it called? They're like a tier 8 battleship, rather squishy, with torpedoes and radar.
The Borodino. It's not out yet, but it will be very, very shortly. But
Constellation something.
Oh, does Constellation have radar?
They released like a very squishy tier 8 battleship with torpedoes and radar.
That's the Constellation. I don't know if it has radar. I can find out.
I'm just now. scrolling along all my many battleships as well.
I feel like I should know this.
Oh, it's gotten to the point where it's hard to like. What once upon a time it was like, oh yeah, I can. Yeah, okay. Constellation does have radar as well.
All right. Okay.
10-kilometer radar.
I remember this because
it used to be easy.
Yeah, it used to be easy. Now these days, I don't even know what ship's currently in testing.
Yeah, I mean, I gave up. I gave up trying to keep track of all the test ships. I mean, plus you play them, they change them. They're not what you played anymore, and you're not allowed to talk about what you played or give your opinion on what you played until they're released anyway. So I just kept, fine, whatever. I'll wait until they're released, and then I won't play them.
I mean, there are so many new premiums, and I'm only interested in a few because I'm not interested in every playstyle or in every ship type and so on, right? And I lost track of so many ships that sometimes I'm really surprised when people are like, "Hey, why aren't you playing this ship?" And I'm like, "Wait, this thing does exist. Yeah, that's something I might be interested in."
Oh yeah, I have that. Oh, I'd forgotten. That happens to me. But I don't know. I think I must have 400 ships now, and I still don't have them all. I don't have any of the Dutch cruisers, and I'm not interested in any of the Dutch cruisers because they're all pretty bad. Well, I don't know. The tier 4's pretty spicy, but
I think before you get to the point where, tier 4 and tier 5 are okay, and then tier 6 up above where they've bounced them against having that airstrike, they're not that great.
I honestly don't feel like they are so bad.
Well, they're certainly not so good. I mean, that tier 9, which one is it? The Johan de Witt.
Yeah.
Yes.
My God, that thing's anemic. This is the thing, because remember there was that, I can't remember what ship it was, but there was some cruiser parked behind an island, and then I think 3 Golden Lions expended all of their airstrikes on it at the same time, and it just disappeared. It was obliterated, and that was like, everybody was like, oh my God, this airstrikes are overpowered. As soon as that clip started going around. Yeah. And the reality, of course, is very, very different. Highly situational. They'll do. It's a bit like the Issei. The airstrikes from the Issei, they'll do some damage, but they're not going to be your major source of damage. But of course, everybody saw that one clip, and the internet lost its mind. It was like, no, Wargaming had done it again, when really they hadn't. And I think they've overdone it. I think they've overestimated how useful those airstrikes were going to be, and have over-nerfed everything else about the ship.
Honestly, I feel like most people just use the airstrikes wrong, because the airstrike is, I mean, you can do damage. I mean, I've hit the Shobart for 10k with one airstriker, so that happens rarely, and there are some squishier ships who get good hits. But mostly it's about fires. You're almost guaranteed to get a fire with an airstrike. So you airstrike something, you have a fire. You don't stack both. You wait until they're damaged con, you airstrike them again. And basically, I get pretty consistent damage of airstrikes because they're guaranteed fire starters. And if the damage con first, then they're going to be on fire again. It takes almost a miracle to not burn with those things.
Okay. Well, yeah. The player base adapts. They find a way. Everybody was saying that the airstrikes were ridiculously overpowered. They're clearly not. They're highly situational, but there is, as you've discovered, a way to get the most bang for buck out of them.
I mean, the problem is the 12-kilometer range, basically, because obviously as a cruiser, you don't necessarily want to be that far on the front line. So you got to find a position where you can use them and, not just die.
Are a lot more useful on some maps than others.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's good that they don't provide any spotting as well. That would have been abused.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's exactly what the player base asked for, right? They wanted more planes, and they wanted to be set on fire more often. Those are like the major things that the people wanted, and Wargaming managed to put them into one thing, right?
More radar battleships, obviously, as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
The game needs.
Yeah. We need more radar, we need more aircraft, because we are, after all, playing World of Warplanes 3.0, aren't we? And here comes the Kearsarge. Oh, my God.
Yeah. So ugly.
You'll need a very big paper bag for that one.
Oh, speaking of expectation versus reality, you've all seen the, was it the Nakhimov skip bombers on the Grozavoy? You've seen that clip?
Oh, yeah.
I haven't seen the clip, but I've been playing it, so I have to be careful what I say.
You're not allowed to have an opinion. It isn't out yet. Yeah.
Yes.
I think we may again be seeing an example of everybody losing their minds over the Dutch cruiser airstrike thing. I certainly hope that what we're seeing is an example of everybody losing their minds over the Dutch cruiser airstrike thing, because that clip was brutal.
Well, that's kind of a downside of their current policy, is we can't give context to stuff like that. You just get these replays from other
people who aren't us.
Yeah. Of other people's
we're not allowed to record or show them
in action, and they're fine to show that off, but there's none of the context.
No, exactly. You're looking at something in isolation. If you're cherry picking, because I mean, I dare say that you could quite easily show an example of a Russian carrier skip bomber missing completely and doing 0 damage. But that doesn't get clicks, does it?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we'll wait and see. Until it comes out, because even if they are, I'm sure the player base will find a way to adapt. The thing that I'm worried about with the Russian carrier is the whole one strike and then you're out, then it's back and recycle and so on and so on. But a lot of their attacks can be launched from outside effective anti-aircraft range anyway, so they get that one full strike with all of their aircraft before any of them get shot down. So it doesn't matter. And that kind of worries me.
I will say this: they are not equal across the tiers at all.
Yes.
At the moment, there's definitely further balancing to be done.
Yeah, and again, of course, remember we're talking about stuff that's still under development, so anything can happen.
I mean, what worries me is that the basic concept is something I would agree with, right? That if you only have one strike, that means actually shot down planes would reduce the number of the strike. Of course, they're countering that with the range, which is already bad. And the next concept they have is that the planes have like this rocket boost, so they're initially fast, right? But then they are very slow, so they want the carriers to get close, which puts the carrier in more danger. But the question is, will people actually do that? Or will they just sit very far in the back, then they'll fly over half of the map, then Wargaming looks at the numbers and like, we need to up the damage because the average damage is low. And then some people will figure out to get close and they will just wreck everything. And Wargaming is like, but the spreadsheet says that most people sit at the back, so we gotta balance for that. And the problem is, I've lost a bit of trust in Wargaming in the last couple of years. 3 years ago, I would have looked at this and said, guys, it's gonna be fine. Wargaming's gonna balance that, right? This is just best ways. But these days, we look at that and I could see them release something completely broken.
Look at the commander skill rework. Everybody here told them that Deadeye was a bad idea. I am proud to say that I was the first one to do so. And they were, it'll be fine. So there was the commander skill rework, and then a rework of the commander skill rework, and now we've just had a rework of the commander skill rework, and we're about to have a rework of the rework of the rework of the commander skill rework. Because everything was fine. We didn't know what we were talking about. It reminds me of, did you ever see that clip from BlizzCon like 3 years ago when J. Allen Brack, Blizzard's president, was answering questions on the stage? It was when the Warlords of Draenor expansion came out, and somebody stood up, a World of Warcraft fan, wearing a hoodie, and said, have you ever considered having servers of the game as it was in previous expansions? And J. Allen Brack just said, no. And that would have been insulting and enough. But then he stood up and had the balls to say, you only think you want that, but you really don't. And then 2 years later, World of Warcraft Classic, the most successful thing they've done since the Wrath of the Lich King. You're seeing a parallel here.
Yeah.
I know this is a complete aside, but Blizzard's actually just been in the news the last day or two, and it's
they're getting sued, aren't they? By California for sexual harassment and
basically they full Ubisoft levels of workplace shittiness, essentially.
I can't remember the exact wording of the lawsuit, but one peculiar thing that I saw was when they were referring to the mistreatment of, and I quote, women and women of colour.
Well,
isn't that all women? Why do you think there's a difference?
I think possibly if they're differentiating between say, racism problems mixed in with sexism problems. Like they're specifically making that distinction.
Possibly it's a legal thing. Possibly if there's a racial thing in there, there's a harsher penalty, which is why they specifically said and women of color within the terms of the lawsuit. I don't know, American law.
It could also have been that they have been mistreated even more, and then they bring like additional charges for those cases or something.
Well, that'll be what to keep an eye on. Bloody warm in here.
That says that old man looks suspiciously familiar. I don't look that old. What are you talking about?
I didn't realise we were being watched. Nobody told me there'd be an audience. I should have raised my fee. So what's our next topic? Unless we still have more to say on this one. I've forgotten what this one was.
Well, it was the Missouri and then...
All right, we're still talking about the Missouri.
I think we've mostly covered the Missouri, right? Or was there anything?
Yeah. Well, I think that's about it. It's all about... It's about battle influence, not profits.
Yeah.
Definitely. So next we had something that we've forgotten to mention last time. There are still 2 new ships announced, like the Karl von Shöenberg and the Brandenburg, like some Germans.
Oh, the Jutland veterans and up. I haven't actually looked. We're talking about the new German battle cruisers. Yeah.
Well, no, these are a new premium destroyer at tier 6.
Oh.
And Brandenburg is... I'm not sure how closely it tracks to the Bismarck, but it's sort of Bismarck-ish, but with 12-inch guns. 305.
So it's a tier 8 Scharnhorst.
Kind of, yeah. In fact, we just had that given to us for testing.
Isn't that what they kind of tried with the Odin?
Yeah, I'm not sure what distinguishes it from the Odin, to be honest.
I mean, I have the stats here. It doesn't seem to have hydro, so it just has the torpedo tubes.
Yeah, I have to admit, I know nothing about this. So this is all going to be you two.
Well, this is basically what's available to see on the dev blog, so we don't have a lot of detail.
Let's have a quick look then. Right, embarrass myself by commenting on things that I have. Oh, here we go.
It'll be the top one, new ships, and then right down at the bottom. So yeah, the Schoenberg is that's going to be 150 mil guns on a tier 6 destroyer, and it doesn't have smoke.
Oh yeah.
So that could be a little different. I mean,
but it has engine boost and heal. Like engine boost, heal, no smoke on a German is a bit weird because it's not what you'd expect from a German.
It definitely doesn't fit with any other German destroyer we have at all. Although if it has the improved AP on those 150 mil guns, then it will at least be semi like the new line. But
like a tier 6 Elvin. But no smoke. What do one's torpedoes like?
Torpedoes are
powerful
8 kilometers, 65 knots. Okay, so they're more in line with the
Also look at it's 2,200 HE shell damage, right? And the new German line, I think, has only 1,700, if I remember correctly. So I think they have buffed the HE damage. So it's
because the Germans they're notorious for. It's bizarre because they give them improved HE penetration and then anemic HE shells that do no damage and have lousy fire chance, which looks like they're doing a U-turn on that one with this. That might be quite interesting, actually. Tier 6 isn't too bad.
I mean, I think it's the same guns as the thing that your 7 had, the 39.
Maybe. Doesn't Gator have an option of 150 mil guns? I'm pretty sure it does.
Didn't they remove their 150s options when they introduced the new line to make the new line special?
Maybe. No, it's still there.
Okay. It's only got 4 guns.
Is the same as the Gator.
Yeah, it's interesting because the old 150s on the German destroyers before the new line were better. Like they had better high explosive, and when they made the 150 line, they nerfed the high explosive of the new line compared to the old high explosive.
I guess they just wanted people to use the AP.
Yeah, but like you don't like it was not like the old high explosive was good. It's just like people were like, yeah, this is banned, and Wargaming was like, we can do worse.
Got a repair party. Tier 6 destroyer
Yeah,
with
that's
a heal.
probably the most interesting thing about it, to be honest. It's not particularly fast. The stability doesn't look particularly great. Yeah. 3 charges a repair party. It's got a slightly faster reload than the Geardas 150 mils, but I can't see, like, the shell damages are the same, so it'll be interesting to see if it's the same AP or if it's the improved pen AP.
It's only 4 guns. It's probably going to, I mean, it's going to have a slow reload, obviously. It's going to rely on citadels, on lightly armored targets. It's a light cruiser hunter, just like the Elding, just not as good as the Elding.
It might be more similar to, well, it'll be slower down, but the Igla with its 139 mil, kind of like cruiser hunting guns.
That's fantastic time to be a light cruiser in World of Warships, isn't it?
Yeah.
All of those battle cruisers that can overmatch you from any angle because all the battleships weren't bad enough. Aircraft everywhere, and unlike the destroyers, you have a citadel. Oh yeah, and now these things. Yes, the Brandenburg.
That's the other one. So that's
lots and lots of secondaries and torpedoes.
It's going to be interesting to see how it compares specifically to the Odin. Let's see, Odin has got a better reload, quite a considerably better reload.
But Odin has 3 less guns, right?
Yeah. Odin is 9 guns, and I think this thing's 12.
This is 12, yeah, with an 18.5 kilometer range.
It's slightly worse than Odin, but I think it can still mount a catapult.
And it should have...
you got a choice between fighter or spotter.
Yeah.
And you should have more hit points than Odin.
58,800.
Yeah, not by much. Odin's 52k. Odin was always notable for having not a lot, so yeah. But I mean, Tirpitz has 69k, so it's still on the low side.
Yeah, but I think you at least have more than a Sigma
of those guns.
1.6. Oof, yeah.
It's terrible.
That's
the Frederick the Great looks at that and thinks, "Oh, I'm not so bad after all." Oof, that is awful.
So the fact it doesn't have a hydro makes me think they don't necessarily intend for this to get in super close. And
well, it has torps though, like 6 kilometer torps.
It can torp, yeah. It's got the usual 6 kilometer torpedoes.
It says it's got lots and lots and lots of secondaries. Well, it kind of does, but it also kind of doesn't. It's got 10 twin 105 mil mounts. So 5 on each side, 10 secondaries per side. That's not a lot. And they're only 105 mil.
Yeah, it also has 6 times 2 150s.
Does it? I didn't see that.
I'll have the stats open. And in the stats,
oh, yes, you're right. You're right. 6 twin 150s as well.
Okay, yeah, that's the same as the Bismarck and the Tirpitz. And what does Odin have? Odin's got less than that.
They're extremely high velocity, the secondaries.
Odin's got 128 mil and 150 mil, so more useful in terms of its caliber size, but I think just fewer of them.
I'll whip the calculator out and figure out what the penetration is for 105 mils, unless anybody knows it off the top of their head.
Well, I can.
26.
It should be.
Yeah, 26 millimeters of HE pen.
Yeah, 105 mils do get quarter caliber penetration on the Germans, don't they? Or is it 128 mil and above? I can't remember.
No, they should get the improved penetration. The 105s reach 32 with IFHE.
Right.
I'm not sure without IFHE, but the Germans are the only nation where all of your secondaries reach the 32 threshold with IFHE at 7 and above.
Okay. Oh, I suppose at some point we should probably talk about the rework of the rework of the rework with secondary skills. Whenever you're ready.
We've talked about that in the past, but I mean it remains to be seen. But they've now clarified this, right? So you don't get you only get the 10% bonus when it starts, but within the first 10 seconds you're up to the 35% bonus you have right now.
Yeah.
Bonus, and then in the next 35 seconds you get like the full bonus, and you lose like about 10% when you switch targets. The target switching is a bit of a shame, because that's definitely something that you'd want to do as a good player based on what shows up. But I mean, it's something that needs to be tested, because like for 10 seconds you have a disadvantage, and after 10 seconds you have an advantage. So
it kind of has been tested. I was watching somebody test it earlier today on the public test server. Flamu had previously, with the Gross Occur First, on the in a training room. This was back when secondaries, worked. And with the Gross Occur First secondaries at a range of, I think, 10 kilometers, took 2 minutes to destroy Des Moines. And then he did it again with a Gross Occur First and a Des Moines in a training room today with all of the new secondary skills. And he almost, like, less than 1,000 health remaining, almost killed the Des Moines in 2 minutes with the new skill. Which means that in a classroom environment, the new skill is as good as what the old skill was. But we don't play in a classroom environment. That Des Moines goes undetected for 10 seconds, and suddenly, it's effectively selecting a new target. You're no longer as accurate. It ducks behind an island. Whereas previously, you got that 65% like that, straight from the start, and it was 65% all the way. And by the way, if a destroyer comes around an island 6 kilometers in front of you, you don't have 45 seconds to wait. Right, you need to be scoring those hits now. So on paper, yes, it is as effective as the old skill. In practice, it isn't, but it is better than the current skill. So on the whole, yeah, definitely an improvement, but nowhere near as good as the old skill was.
It definitely feels like they've almost deliberately made it so that it is much more valuable against large surface targets, battleships especially, and
not as valuable against things that only stay spotted for a couple of seconds, like
destroyers,
submarines
and subs. Yeah, I wonder how much the impetus was,
because they changed the rocket attack plane thing, didn't they? And destroyer captains everywhere went, "Yay!" And I said, "Yeah, you're just a happy bystander."
Oh yes, yeah.
This wasn't aimed at you.
Yeah.
This was so that submarines couldn't be one-shotted on the surface by rocket attack planes.
Yeah.
Because, a destroyer has 20,000, 25,000, nearly 30,000 health at tier 10. How much health does a tier 10 submarine have? 15,000? Yeah. I look at all of these changes that are coming in and ask yourself, are Wargaming doing this for the benefit of the player base who've been complaining about rocket attack planes wiping out their destroyers for the last 2 years, who've been complaining about don't get to my age. I've lost where I'm going halfway through the conversation. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, secondaries. We've been complaining that the secondary skills have been nerfed, and then they're making them good again, just out of the goodness of their hearts, or are they making them good in a way that will shut you up, but not nuke submarines the second they're introduced in the next season of ranked battles?
Yeah.
Always ask yourself why Wargaming appear to be doing what the player base wants.
I think subs, we definitely have to have that as a context to think about why things are changing.
Yes, I'm with you, Atom. I don't really trust Wargaming anymore. I look at what they're bringing in and I think to myself, okay, why are you really making this change? Second question. Well, after they've answered the first question, second question, are you sure?
I mean, I have to say this, right? Secondaries get a lot of shit recently, but honestly, even in the current state, they still work on the Germans, because they work a lot less, obviously, against destroyers and such. But if you are in prolonged engagement with battleships, with cruisers, you'll do quite a bit of damage, right? I've managed 70k in secondaries still, and if I get like 200 secondary hits, you expect to get about 40 to 50k damage in a high tier game. So. But yeah, they have definitely nerfed the secondaries against like smaller targets. And the problem is that if you aren't like a German or a key, then those were like your primary target, because very little secondaries actually go over the 32 threshold that you need for battleships. So basically, Wargaming has changed secondaries so that they only work against bigger ships. but a lot of secondaries were never really effective against him in the first place. The only, like the US secondaries, the only reason they have to exist is to farm like basically destroyers. Or
yes. And the French and Italian secondaries are completely pointless, and they're basically decorational and start the occasional fire.
Yeah, and it's like, the US secondaries used to work against cruisers before the RFIG changed. They took that away, and then with the rework, they took the accuracy away that they no longer work against destroyers, so now they are just decoration, which is a shame because we had, like, with the Missouri and the Georgia and the Ohio, like, interesting interesting US ships.
I think you meant Massachusetts, not Missouri.
Yes, sorry.
Yes. I was thinking, Missouri? We're back to that again. And yet, and I know, even before I say it, I know there's nothing historically accurate about World of Warships. Aside from how much of a game changer and how dominant aircraft carriers were. But apart from that, there's nothing historically accurate about World of Warships. But ask yourself this question. What were all those secondaries on battleships and cruisers for? Because it wasn't for shooting at battleships and other cruisers. And yet, here we are.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they hit, they would be more effective than battleships because battleship main guns are capped at the damage. They just don't hit.
Well, it's certainly been nice if particularly Italian battleship secondaries were a bit better. Seeing as how the SAP is, like, you're at a disadvantage versus destroyers.
Yeah.
I mean, it would give them a reason to get close.
Yeah.
I don't get why. Is it just, well, again, capped against destroyers? Ask yourself this question. Are they going to be capped against submarines as well?
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Suddenly it's all starting to make sense, isn't it? Submarines must be a success. So nerf everything that might destroy them before you introduce them. Call me a cynical old fool, but I see a pattern developing here.
I mean, they've also, like, with the rework of the captain skills, right? They added, like, what they changed about one skill for in anti-submarine stuff, right? Everyone has, what was it, like, that you have more splash damage and something, right?
Oh, yeah,
yes, battleship high explosive does 15% more splash damage if it's shooting at a submarine, stuff like that. There's all these little addendums added to the various skills.
Yeah, but there were very few, right? It's like, you'd think, like, when they add submarines, that they, like, update, like, actually the skills so that you could probably maybe spec against them or, like, specialize against them or have additional utility against them, right? But there was basically nothing. There were just some token changes. So I guess we can look forward to the rework of the rework when then they...
Yes, when they rework all the submarine skills or anti-submarine skills, or actually put some anti-submarine skills in. Is it just me, or did we not miss the days when I could look at the captain skills and say, I know what that skill does. I know exactly how it's going to work, and I know exactly what effect I'm going to have. And now we're looking at the skills, and it's, well, this might work on the second Tuesday of every August. Maybe. But only if I'm wearing clean underwear and I've had a shave that morning. But even when it is working, the game won't tell me. I'll just be expected to trust it. There'll be no icon that pops up that lets me know this skill is now active. I'll just have to screw it.
Especially some of the
I miss the days when I just knew what the skills did. When they said this skill will give you 65% more accurate secondaries. This skill will make you 12% less visible. And that was it. You didn't need to get a calculator and a slide rule out to figure whether or not the skill was actually going to be a benefit to you or not. And you knew when it was going to work. I kind of miss those days.
I mean, yes and no. I'm not opposed to more how should I say, more variable skills, right? For example, that's something that I've been proposing for a long time is that if you like a defensive skill that maybe scales with like how close you are to an enemy or something, and they have now something that what your cooldown for damage can also gets reduced, or for the heal gets reduced, the more potential damage you have. It didn't sound so great because the numbers might need tweaking, but I like the idea, right? I like the idea of a skill that maybe, changes over the course of the battle or things like that. I also like the idea of more defensive skills.
I agree, but you see, this is where expectation runs into reality and ends up in a snotty heap on the floor, because you say such and such, you get better value out of this skill. It scales exponentially on how close the enemies are. Which enemies? Do aircraft count? Is it only visible enemies? Is it ships that are inside your detection range, even if you, whether or not you can or can't see them? And suddenly we end up having to get our slide rule and calculator out to figure out whether or not this skill is actually going to be of any benefit to us.
I mean, but there is like what you mentioned before. It would be very easy to solve if you had an icon like that said like closest enemy is this and this is the bonus that you get. And the sad thing is, it feels like I played video games 20 years ago and I had that information. It's not like that's a new development.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, yes, you can have more complex skills with greater variation and scope for tactical gameplay, but if you don't know when those skills are actually working, you don't know whether or not they're useful. So just give us an icon.
Some of the cruiser skills have particularly fall into that category. I think, like Outnumbered, which gives you a dispersion bonus if there's more enemy ships than allies. So if you're obviously continuously counting the ships that are in range of your main ship's battery, then that's fine. You'll definitely know when that's active. But it'd be really nice if an icon would come up and show you all the same. There's also Top Grade Gunner, which is basically the same. It has a conditional activation, which you don't get to see in game.
That's another thing that's been a similar topic. Detection. It's like you can be. How many different ways can you be detected in World of Warships? You can be visually spotted. You can be hydroed. You can be radared. You can be air spotted. That about covers it.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I suppose technically there's the 2-kilometer auto spotting radius as well.
Yes, and there's also proximity detection. So 5 different ways of being spotted. Now, if I'm in the Missouri and there's a Shimakaze 7 kilometers away who can see me, but I can't see him, and 10 kilometers away there's a Stalingrad running his radar, what do you think is more important for me to know? That there's a Shimakaze spotting me from 7 kilometers away, or that I've been radared by a Stalingrad on the far side of an island 10 kilometers away who couldn't shoot at me anyway? And which icon is the one that takes precedence and pops up on screen and lets me know I've been spotted? It ain't the somebody can see you in direct line of sight icon. Why can't it show us? Instead, we get the radar, and then if we're being radared and hydroed at the same time, we still get the you're being radared icon until the radar expires, and then the hydroed icon pops up. And then when the hydroed icon expires, because you're no longer in hydro range, or the hydro expires and somebody is looking at you, that's when you get the exclamation icon for somebody sees you visually. When that is surely at least equally as important to know as every other source of detection. So why does it only give you the one? And whose decision was it that letting you know you've been radared is more important than letting you know you've been visually spotted? Why can't we have all 3? That would tell me more. But again, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
It would be very easy. You'd have like at top a spotted icon, and then you have like 4 like small symbols atop it, and the one that are checked basically lit up, right? And then you can see you're spotted like by 3 sources.
Yeah, your average player wouldn't care. He just knows he's been spotted. He's like, oh, great, I've been spotted. Doesn't need to know, wouldn't want to know any more details than that. Your super unicorns have all of that information available to them and can make use of that information. But no, just you're spotted. By what? Well, radar and maybe something else, but you won't know until the radar expires. I mean, really? I don't know.
It puts, there's probably mods that do that, but it's the sort of information that you shouldn't have to rely on mods to. No. I'm kind of reminded of way back when in World of Tanks, before we had any of the minimap info that you do now, and there was a real paucity of information available at times to the player that just made it really difficult to know what was going on unless you just had to commander skills.
Yeah, a lot of the time you're like, am I close enough for them to spot me? Well, technically, maybe, but I'm in, broken ground and I have 100% camo, so that depends on what his view range is and how well trained his crew are in Eagle Eye and blah 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 and this and that. And then now you just got range circles around your tank. As long as there are no red thingies inside that green circle, I won't be detected when I fire. And a lot of people don't pay any attention to the minimap, and they don't realize that's what it's for. But the information is there for the people who are capable of exploiting it. And previously, a lot of that was just down to mods. That's a good question, though. I'm curious if that sort of information is available to be displayed in a mod, and whether or not somebody has done it for World of Warships, letting you know the various different levels of detection that you're currently under. Because I'd love to know that.
I don't specifically know there is, but it seems like the kind of thing
I'll have to have a look.
But yeah,
it's an interesting question. I mean, it depends if the server sends that information, or if the server just sends you like just one part.
Yeah, I mean, if this, well, it could be. It depends on how they've written their code, whether or not the server's polling for every level of detection that you're currently under, or just the one that matters the most according to whatever Wargaming have decided. It could be a network issue. I don't know. I suspect probably not. I think they're just lazy. Because I don't trust anybody.
I mean, I just feel like they have... they probably look at this and he's like, how is this going to make us money? And they're like, no, that's not going to make you money. That's a good change for the player base. Like, how does it make us money?
Yes, you always, and I'm not just throwing shade at Wargaming here, they're a business the same as anybody else. And the bottom line that you always have to ask yourself every time a company makes a change or refuses to make a change that people are asking for is, how will this or will this not affect their bottom line? Will this cost too much and not actually provide any source of income for them? In which case, it's never going to happen, which isn't unreasonable. And I think the number of players who would get a benefit from this kind of change that I'm suggesting is probably not even half of 1% of the player base. And those are the kind of numbers that Wargaming look at. These are the kind of numbers that every business looks at. Because the people who actually know how to play the game and are capable of absorbing and utilizing that kind of information probably don't actually spend an awful lot of money on the game. They don't need to spend an awful lot of money on the game because they play it all the time and they've got all the ships and they've got millions of credits and tons of gold sitting in their accounts. They're not the kind of people that Wargaming are likely to earn any money from, other than recommending the game to their friends by word of mouth. And they're extremely unlikely to be the kind of section of the player base that Wargaming are willing to spend money on. They're probably not, then.
Well,
I was watching a Josh Strife Hayes video today about the insidious way that MMO developers monetize their games, free to play MMOs. It kind of applies to World of Warships and World of Tanks as well, but not really, because they're not MMOs. But you've got three different kinds of players. You've got the new players, you've got the players who were invested in the game, and then you've got the guys who have maxed everything out. So, we fall into the category of people who have maxed everything out. As far as the new players are concerned, your initial experience, and this is probably true in World of Warships and World of Tanks as well, is as painless and hassle-free as possible, because they don't want to piss you off in the first hour that you play the game, the first day that you play the game. So playing at level, you're mostly playing against bots, basically. You certainly are playing against bots at tier 1. You're mostly playing against bots at tier 3, 4, and sometimes 5, depending on the server that you're playing on. Hello, North America. And so you have an enjoyable experience, even if you don't really know what you're doing. And that's fine. What they want you to do is to, as quickly as possible, become a tier 2 player, somebody who's invested in getting better, getting that tier 10 ship, then starting another nation, then getting the tier 10 ships in that nation, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And that's the point where they start creating problems so they can sell you solutions, because these are the people who care and are probably going to spend money. Meanwhile, the people who've maxed everything out, they don't care about the people who have maxed everything out. Because they've maxed everything out, they no longer have any problems in the game, so there's nothing that they can sell them because they've got everything. Until they introduce, well, in the world of MMOs, they introduce a new patch, a new expansion that resets everything, introduces a new level cap and makes everybody crap again. And then that's why they introduce expansions. It's so that all of the max level players, which at the end of any given expansion on most of the player base, are reset back to tier 2 players that they can sell things to again. And you see this in World of Warships. We've got all the tier 10 ships. Italian cruisers, yay! Okay, I've got all of those. Dutch cruisers, yay! Okay, now I've got all of those. Submarines, this is how they keep you in that mid-tier where they can maximize the profit by selling you things.
Yeah, they've even managed to sell us factory ships now, right? For random bundles.
Yeah. And once again, I've completely forgotten why I brought that example up. Because when you get to my age, the memory is the first thing. Or is it the second thing? I can't remember. That goes. Anyway.
We are known to go off topic.
What was I going to say? It was, it kind of ties into that point in that, they've what you were saying about the judgment of what's going to make them the most money. I mean, we kind of saw this in World of Tanks as well for a long time. Anyway, it was the kind of almost content mill of just new lines of vehicles
and a new premium every month.
Yeah, and World of Tanks, it's now come down to basically just a dribble of premiums, and very, very, very rarely they'll bring out a new line of tanks.
Yeah. The bond equipment, I think, was the latest straw to break the camel's back in World of Tanks, where you basically have to play, I think it's ranked, over and over and over in order to get all the bond equipment, which is just way better than all of the, like vents and camo nets and so on and so on. It's like 50% again as effective. And so if you want to be competitive, you have to do this and so on and grind out. It's the latest hamster wheel in World of Tanks for the super unicums and the people who aspire to be super unicums.
I think
again, it's all about keeping things going that they can charge you money for, that making you want things.
I think it was probably a big driver behind they were proposing a big crew rework for World of Tanks as well, but I'm not actually sure.
Getting rid of the whole crew and just replacing it with one commander.
Yeah, so basically the World of Warships model.
Yes. I wasn't sure. I didn't really read too much about it. I don't know if they were going for the World of Warships model or the World of Warships Legends model, which had a very, very good commander system. And we ended up with a commander rework and the various different. You can have a commander with skills for battleships, skills for cruisers, so on and so on. Ended up kind of copying and adapting what they have in Legends and moving it up. Because, I mean, the commander rework wasn't all bad. That having been able to have one captain and stick him on whichever ship and he would be trained for that ship. Oh, it's a great idea. As far as it went, it's just the skills themselves that were mostly terrible, at least in the first iteration. And they were absolute, just hardly. I mean, don't get me started about Deadeye. And that's just a poster boy for the commander skill rework. It wasn't the only one. It's just the one that got all the press. But yeah, I mean, these things aren't entirely terrible, but you always just have to ask yourself, how is this going to make them money? Or if they don't do this, how was that not going to make them money? And that will usually, and there's nothing, and again, I have to keep stressing this, nobody should be surprised at this. They're a business running a free-to-play game. The monetization isn't nearly as predatory as, games in the mobile market, for example, or other free-to-play games. It's not that bad. It's actually fairly restrained. That doesn't mean it's good, but it's not that bad.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a mobile game, then basically halfway through the battle, you'd have a pop-up, you're out of ammunition, would you like to buy more?
Yeah, would you like? Yeah, exactly. No, you think you're joking. You're not. And I've seen PC MMOs like that as well, that are basically balanced around you having healing potions. And you think it's fantastic. Well, I can't die. These healing potions automatically go off whenever I get to a certain amount of health, and I've got 200 of them. I'm invincible. And then you run out. And the only way to get healing potions is through the premium shop.
And they give you enough that you get invested into the game, that you love it, right? Yes. And that you want to play more.
Tier 1, new player, make it as painless and enjoyable as possible. Then once you're hooked, their aim is to turn you into a Tier 2 player as quickly as they can, because the Tier 2 player needs to buy the health potions because he's enjoyed what he's played so far. Yeah, that's how it works.
Actually, the next topic that we plan on talking for that we've kind of talked about a little bit, I guess, about premiums in general, and like maybe what premiums we enjoy, or what premiums maybe we'd like to see more in the game of. Like as you said, they are a company, right? They gotta sell us something, right? And there are like, for example, I love my Okhotnik. I think the Okhotnik is not really too much of a game-breaking ship. It's just low tier that makes it easy to farm people with. And it's my guilty pleasure.
Oh, did you say the Yukon?
Okhotnik, tier 5 Russian meme boat.
Yes,
it's the talk of World of Warships.
Yes. That's the war canoe, isn't it? The really
exactly.
long one. Yeah. I thought you said a Yukon. I was like, what? You love the Yukon? What's wrong with you? These Austrians are weird. Yeah, the Okhotnik. Yeah, that's a fun little ship. Trying to think. I think the last. I mean, there's the Warspite, obviously. Yeah, my girl. But I really. It's years since I played the Greniashi. You remember that?
Oh yeah.
When was the last time anybody saw one in a battle? I can't remember.
Back before the whole destroyer stealth nerf, the stealth firing thing, that thing was dirty. It was so OP. And then it just became a kind of reasonably competent tier 5 destroyer.
I mean, it hasn't been in the game for a long time, so only very old, like, veterans would even have it, right? So obviously it's going to see the launch.
You were able to buy it as the pre-launch bundle in the beta test. There was the Greniashi and the Sims, I think it was. So you could have them
when the
game went live. And that was it, yeah, there was a package of 3. The Sims is another one that's been horribly power crept.
Especially since the AA, like the CV rework and the AA, like they at least used to be able to boast decent AA at its tier, and now not so much.
Because I remember when the Sims, I loved it. I thought it was amazing because it was. It had fast turning turrets. It was tier 7, and the only competition was the Mayhem, which is arse. I remember grinding up the Mayhem, and I was like, I hate this thing. I hate it. I can't. The Mayhem was so bad, it made me look forward to the Benson.
Although the
Benson was good. It's not that bad now, but again, it's power creep. But the Sims was a tier 7 American destroyer with fast turning turrets. It could stealth torpedo. Oh my god! Because the Mayhem couldn't until it got the Benson torpedoes. And I think due to the way the tech tree worked, they were the last thing that you could actually unlock on the thing. But yeah, and now, I mean, you see a Sims and you just think, oh, that poor guy. Especially in a tier 9 game.
Mm. But for fun fact about the Greniashi that you mentioned earlier, right? So basically, like when I stream, usually the last battle I play in Okhotnik. So I play like once a stream I play in Okhotnik because it's my guilty pleasure as the last battle. And I usually division with Viper Sox, and he mostly plays a Greniashi in his over 7,000 battles in that thing.
Well, it was such a good ship though. As long as you didn't have to turn, as long as you could just stay at range, firing at the same target that wasn't adjusting its coursal speed, and just hammer them with his 130s. As long as you didn't have to turn the ship and then wait 30 seconds for the guns to track back onto the target.
That's pretty much the only thing that is truly bad on it.
Yeah, turret rotation. Ooh, Japanese destroyers look at that and think, oh, our shit ain't that bad after all. Other premiums, I don't know. I mean, I lose track because there are so many. And again, I'm not criticizing wargaming here. They're a company; they have to put food on the table and selling premium ships. You don't have to buy them. Just buy the ones you like the look of. I'm not sure about their. Well, I suppose they have to take. But how many different ways are there of getting premium ships? You can buy them in the shop. You can get them via. Okay, well, yes, you can get them via loot crates, but only on special occasions. We'll not count that. The regular process of getting your hands on a premium, either buy it on the shop, get it through an in-game mission, research it in not the Naval Training Center, the Research Bureau, I think they call it now.
Mm-hmm.
I have never used it, so I can never make my mind up what it's called. Or get it for coal in the armory, or get it for steel. So 5 different ways. So if it's steel, forget it. I'm never going to see it. If it's Research Bureau, forget it. I'm never going to see it. And I've got all of the ships that are available for coal. So I don't really have an awful lot of interest in new premiums because most of them I'm never going to get my hands on. Because I don't do ranked or any of that stuff, so I never get any steel except for when I'm knocking the snowflakes off my ships at Christmas. I think I'm up to 16,000, so another 3 years and I might be able to get the Georgia. Oh, wait, no, that's Research Bureau. Okay, another 3 years I might be able to get the Stalingrad. Yeah, I don't even have a Stalingrad. How sad.
Oh, me neither. I have exactly one steel ship, and it's the Somers. And I have 0 Research Bureau ships because fuck that.
Yeah, exactly. It's why on earth? And again, we're going back to the whole tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type player. All of those players who had everything maxed out, Wargaming figured out a way to turn you back into grinders.
Yep.
Reset the lines and grind them out again. You're a tier 2 player again. Now we can sell you things.
It's nice that you can get these things and it costs you time.
Yeah.
But that's why it's there, really, is to give people something to grind for.
Exactly. And, there's nothing wrong with that because, as Atom says, fuck that shit. I didn't spend all that time grinding these ships out to grind them out again. No, thank you. And that's fine. People can choose, and a lot of people have because, you see Georges and whatever other Research Bureau ships are at. Shikishima's a Research Bureau ship? Is it? Or is
I
it?
don't know. Could also be.
I just know I don't have it and I'm never going to. But yeah, people can choose. The option is there. I don't have a problem with games giving you choice. It's when they lock these things behind progression walls that you must do this that I have issues. But World of Warships doesn't really do that. I can't think of any examples other than you must play the game in order to get to the IGN Yamato because that's the way the game works.
I think the only thing that would kind of maybe fall under that is when we've had stuff like the Puerto Rico where they just made it, technically you get it for free, but it's so obnoxious to do. So.
That was a clear case of manufacturing a problem so they could sell you the solution. Yeah. That's something that like Ubisoft loves to do.
Yeah.
What's the game's grindy? We have a solution for that. Can I direct your attention to the Helix store? You made it grindy, you bastards. But there's a way around that. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what bugs me the most about like the Research Bureau? Like it's not like Wargaming invented this whole thing to reset your progression and do stuff again, right? There are many of games where you can like reset your progress on maybe a weapon, a character, or something like that, and do it again and get like prestige ranks. If you do so.
Diablo, for example.
The thing is that in World of Warships, you don't reset your Shimakaze, right? You reset your IGN line, meaning even if you love your Shimakaze, when you play it so much, you're like, I have no problem playing through that again or something. Now you play through you play through the line, right? You play through a lot of different ships that play differently on different tiers, on tiers where there might not even players around to play with, and you have to rebuild them and re-upgrade all of them. It's just like, you can't even just because you like something so much, you reset that. Basically, people just reset something that they dislike and then possibly free XP through it, right? It's like they took a system and they twisted it enough. They took a system that I didn't like and twisted it enough to make it even more shit.
Yeah, but they've got to figure out a way of getting people to burn through all that free experience. Simply sticking utter turkeys in the various different lines at tier 8 and 9 so people will burn through free experience just to get to the tier 10 wasn't enough. Hence the Research Bureau. People got too much free experience. They thought, that's all right, we'll introduce ships for free experience. 1 million free XP. Nobody will have that much. Yeah, of course.
I'll be honest, I prefer it this way than the Gaijin way, which is just to repeatedly nerf the economy into the ground.
Yeah.
And
don't forget the Naval Training Center, as the Research Bureau was originally going to be known, it's one of the few examples in recent memory I can think of where everybody said, because their original plan was not to use it to unlock new ships, was to buff ships that you already had to make the good players even better. And everybody said that is an absolutely terrible idea. I don't care if it's only a 5% buff to reload. It's just a terrible idea. Do not do that. You'll drive a wedge in the player base. And they actually listened. They don't listen often.
It does take a fairly big pushback,
yes.
But yeah, sometimes
they're not quite Blizzard Activision. They do listen. They don't always do what we want them to do, but sometimes they do, and they do at least listen.
But that was also a few years ago, like it's interesting to think about, but the last Gamescom that actually happened was like 2 years ago. And on the last Gamescom, I mean, people were still relatively like happy. Like other contributors that we talked about, there wasn't like all of this doom and gloom that is now. It's only 2 years ago, and
carriers been changed at that point.
It was shortly after they stopped. Like I think early in the summer, right? They did the change with the sectors that is now, which was basically the last time they really changed Antia. They basically broke Antia completely with the current sector change. And then they stopped working on it. After they made Antia pointless, they were like, yep, we're done now. But at this point, we didn't know that they were done, right? So that was just the latest change because they have kept changing Antia like each month for a while now. So people were still also optimistic about that, and basically, we were like, yeah, okay, carriers aren't in a great shape right now, but the tow river could still somehow be fixed and so on. And people were still somewhat optimistic. And that was, I think, the last time that there was like a lot of positivity, right? And then there came like the whole Puerto Rico, and then it's been downhill ever since.
Puerto Rico, the Christmas loot boxes, the Yukon. I'm certain that I'm forgetting things.
The detonation flags or the flag removal is just something very recently.
Yeah, we're farming detonation. We've got to stop those detonation flag farmers.
Oh yeah,
that was
definitely.
Makarov, right? The Christmas crate thing. Or was that?
Sorry, what was that?
Was the Makarov the Christmas crate thing, or was that?
Yes,
yeah, that was that. Okay.
It was because they weren't doing anything that they hadn't done differently for the previous 2 Christmases, except telling people that there was a shortlist. If you didn't have a Makarov or a Krasny Krim, then no matter what, those would be the first ships that you got from the loot crates. And until you got on every ship on the shortlist, which were the really shit ones that nobody was willing to buy, you wouldn't get a Missouri or a Nelson or whatever. But they had, and again, the information was there. They didn't make a special effort to feature it prominently, but the information was there in the first 2 years that they did this. But then last year, they didn't even put that information in the announcement at all. And the excuse, because it was an excuse, because they did deliberately try to mislead people, the excuse was, well, we told you about this last year and the year before. You should all know. What? We should have all remembered something that was buried in the footnote of a news portal post that hardly any of us ever read 2 years ago. We should remember that, should we? And what about everybody who started playing the game in the last year? Should they have remembered that as well? So, yeah, that was the Christmas loot box fiasco.
Yeah, why don't new players look up news posts from 3 years ago and figure that out, right? I mean, it's obvious, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was it was around about that Gamescom 2 years ago when I think they ran out of their good. They ran out of goodwill. The community goodwill had exhausted itself at that point, and we stopped just thinking that they are trying, they are listening to us, and we start regardless of what the truth of the matter may be. That was the point where people started just expecting them to be sleazebags and scumballs and mislead and outright lie and be deceitful. And constantly try. Even if that's not the case, that's the impression that people now have. And they have that impression for very good reasons because of the various different PR fiascos and disasters that they have inflicted upon themselves over the course of the last 2 years. I mean, there's some great people working at Wargaming. Maybe not so much at World of Tanks, but definitely at World of Warships. I mean, I'm not so much sure about you, Atam. I don't know how many community events you've been to, but I know that myself and Jedi, on the rare occasion we can get them out of the Western Isles, we've been to St. Petersburg. Have you been?
I haven't been. I think the last time I went to a thing, gosh, must have been the show match, so like 2016 or something. It's been a while.
Actually, I'm looking at you, and I just realised now I am actually thinking of the World of Tanks Grand Finals in Warsaw about 6 years ago.
Yeah, I've actually got I've still got my pro player badge.
So have I. That's right, kids.
We're pro players. Guys. It says so on this badge.
Yeah, that was when we did the World of Warships show match. So it would have been 6 years ago before the game came out.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I mean, I have met, and obviously you've got the community people working in Prague, and I feel so sorry for guys like Chrysantos and Conway.
Oh yeah.
When they have to go out and put a brave face on whatever shit show has come down from St. Petersburg this month, and I wouldn't have their job for all the money I would have it for all the money in the world, but it would have to be all of the money in the world. You know, they're good people. They try hard. They do their best. But, well, you know, see what happens when a company gets big enough, and the people who were there at the start, who were gamers and then developers, and now they're managers. And, you know, things change. Sadly, that's just the way things go.
I mean, also, if a company has a certain size, right, then they are no longer the gamers that they hire, right? They hire managers for management, and they have management experience from, I don't know, a pharma company or whatever, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, somebody's been brought in, not because they have ever played a game in their life or have ever written a game in their life, but because they've managed businesses. So they've got no investment in the product whatsoever. They never play it. They don't understand it. They just manage the business. Unfortunately, they have the power to make decisions on how the game. You know, it's just the way things go when a company gets big enough and successful enough. You know, I mean, you could look at the entire development of World of Warships, and again, we're going back to this Josh Strife Hayes thing. World of Warships in its first 2 years, you got detonated. Here's some flags to ensure it doesn't happen again. You set a whole bunch of target ships on fire. Oh, you've done really well here. Here's a reward. You know, I was constantly talking in the first 2 years of World of Warships that this game is amazing. You know, it's so much fun to play. Everything is enjoyable. You don't really have to spend. It was the perfect free-to-play game to me. You didn't have to spend a penny on it. You need flags? Just go out and play. You will earn flags. In-game missions will give you all the stuff that you need. And I wanted to spend money on the game. That was the trick. It didn't make me feel like I needed to spend money on the game. It was a good game that I enjoyed playing, and I wanted to spend money on it. So I was quite happy to put money down on premium ships, even if I ended up not liking them. I was happy to be invested in the game. Tier 1 player. And then in the next 2 years, once they'd sunk their claws into us, that's when things started changing. Bit by bit, a thin end of the wedge here and there. And now we end up having to go out and farm detonation flags. That's what we've been reduced to. But that's the way things work. Nobody should be surprised by this. You look at every other free-to-play game in the world; they all follow this process. The only thing we can do as players is to dig our heels in when we feel like things have gone too far and try to keep them honest and say, no, I'm not spending money on that. Go away.
You know, I'm not sure about every free-to-play game. I mean, I haven't played Path of Exile in a while, but Path of Exile has always been a game that has remained completely fair without pay to win and stuff. I don't know how the game has developed since, but I haven't heard any outrage, so I assume it's still
I don't know. I've never played it, but I would give you the example of RuneScape. Nothing happens in RuneScape unless the developers and the players agree that it's good for the game. Every proposed change, they poll the players. And it has to receive at least, 63% approval from the players before any change goes in. If it doesn't go in. So, you got the one extreme, RuneScape. And then the other extreme, World of Warcraft, where the developers all think that they're far smarter than their player base. And just don't listen at all. Because how could you possibly know what makes a game great? Because we're the ones who play it. We're the ones who decide whether or not we're going to extend our subscription. We're the ones who cancel our subscriptions and all go to Final Fantasy XIV.
I just remembered something from back when I was playing Path of Exile, and the developers once, like, they said something that they visited like a seminar about like free-to-play stuff and so on, and they were told that as a developer you really need to put pay to win in your game to be successful. And so they asked themselves, so what's pay to win? So they sold in their shop like pay to win, and it was a consumable firework. It was just a cosmetic, because they were like, well, I mean, fireworks looks cool. That's winning, right?
And I bet you people bought it.
Possibly, but like they had the story, and they're like, so we're now selling pay to win in the shop, and it's a consumable firework that does nothing.
Yeah, but I'll bet you people bought it out of appreciation.
Probably,
for their sense of humor.
Sure,
they had something like that in Guild Wars 2 as well. No, I really shouldn't start these stories with. They had something like that in this other game if I can't actually remember the full story. Because it creates a level of expectation that I cannot possibly meet. But yes, there was something similar to that in Guild Wars 2, where they put something in that was clearly. Oh, they did something like that in World of Warcraft as well. I know, Jedi, you once dabbled in World of Warcraft, couldn't see the point.
Very briefly, yeah. I got to meet Jingles the gnome in person, as it were.
Yes.
And see your many mounts.
During the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, the second expansion for the game, all the way through vanilla World of Warcraft, all the way through the Burning Crusade, because I played mostly a mage, and it was becoming a running gag that every time a patch was announced, they would give you all the patch notes, and there'd be like this huge list of paladin changes, huge list of shaman changes, warrior changes, and then like mages are here too, and then on to there was they never ever did anything for mages until eventually, and this was just an example of the sheer level of contempt that Blizzard Activision has for its player base. They got so sick of listening to the mages complain that there was never any changes for mages. That one patch came out and there's a list of warrior changes and paladin changes, and then mage changes. Changed the icon for Arcane Brilliance, which was an intellect buff that mages could do. That was it. There was a change. They changed the icon. And of course, mages cried all over their keyboards and blah, blah, blah. And Blizzard didn't care because they just didn't take the piss out of mages. That wasn't enough. Later on in the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, there was the city of Dalaran. It's a floating city. It was the main quest hub in that expansion. It's a city of mages, big flying city in the clouds above Crystal Song Forest. And there was a shop that sold stuff for mages in Dalaran. And one of the things that they sold, which cost a ridiculous amount of gold at the time, pennies these days, thanks to the rampant inflation in the game economy. But one of the things that they sold was something that changed the icon for Arcane Brilliance. You bought this thing and used it, your Arcane Brilliance would get a different icon. Years after they took the piss out of mages in the patch notes, they finally delivered on it. There's another kick in the teeth for mages.
That's some next level trolling right there.
Isn't it? It's got nothing to do with warships.
True.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I was actually, I've been sort of semi-aware of Final Fantasy XIV for a while. I've got a good friend who actually made back in my World of Tanks days who is dead into it. So I finally bit the bullet and downloaded it. So we'll see what that's like.
I have been really, really enjoying it. There are so many things that it does so much better than World of Warcraft until I reached level 20. And then I got very sad. Because when you reach level 20, the main storyline quest. See, World of Warcraft is all about dungeon and raid experience. Final Fantasy is all about the story. You pick what you like, and if you like story, you play Final Fantasy XIV. If you like endgame raiding and dungeoneering, you play World of Warcraft. If you like being able to do whatever you like at a very, very slow pace and really get into the crafting, you play Elder Scrolls Online. Here's the problem in Final Fantasy XIV. I despise being told how I should be playing the game. I'm very much a casual player. I like to just do quests, go on adventures, and blah, blah, so on and so on. I cannot begin to express how much I hate being forced into doing group content with other players, because hell is other people. Right? World of Warcraft, I haven't done a dungeon or a raid in about 3 years. until this latest Shadowlands expansion, when in order to, you are forced to do a certain dungeon in certain different, and that really, if you want to progress, you have to do it. So that pissed me off. Get into Final Fantasy 14, once you hit level 20, you get this main storyline quest that you have to find a group for a dungeon for. Now, the dungeon itself it's easy. But what other games, if they force you into dungeon content, they will often do versions of the dungeon that can be done solo for people who like to play solo, or even in groups of two, just one friend that you play with. Can't do that in Final Fantasy 14, so okay, fine, it's just this once. Came out of the dungeon, handed the quest in, gave me another quest, straight to another dungeon. Are you serious here? You know what? No. So I'm playing with Rita, and I said, screw this, I'm going to go and get a drink and have a smoke. So Rita said, well, I'll see how many more, what's after this? 3 more dungeons. Before I said, that's enough, I'm going to bed. And I haven't logged back in since. I absolutely cannot stand being told how I should play a game. And unfortunately, I was really enjoying Final Fantasy 14 up until that point. Because it just brought back all of my worst memories of grinding through dungeons in World of Warcraft. Such a shame. And once again, we're not talking about World of Warships. I blame Aiton for bringing up Path of Exile.
Absolutely fine.
Then I probably shouldn't mention that after watching Jingles' video, I downloaded Final Fantasy.
Well, yeah, sorry. I can only talk about what I've experienced. Up to level 20. Yeah,
I'm already way past level 20.
Oh, okay, fine. Oh.
Well, I mean, World of Warships, we once upon a time talked about premiums. I guess I could mention a premium like the Atlanta is still a ship I enjoy. It might not be the best ship, but it's and I mean like the camo. Like there is just something that makes you smile if you have like a beach on your ship.
Yes. I was a big fan. I mean, I think that camo is awesome. Because that's what the ship's all about. And I love that they've acknowledged that. At the same time, I probably would never use it because I like my ships to look like actual warships. That's just me. Obviously, people's tastes vary. I have all of these space camos for various ships that I have never used and never will because I'm not playing Masters of Orion here.
Well, at least these days you can kind of turn those off and just make it look like default camos.
Exactly. Yeah, there is an option. I don't want to see the Arpeggio Blue Steel camos. Fine, if you want to play those ships, I've got all of those ships. I play them, but I turn the camos off because I play World of Warships here, not playing Path of Exile or whatever. I'm not playing Arpeggio Blue Steel, but that's just my tastes. But the Atlanta, oh, how the mighty have fallen! I used to love that ship, and I just can't. I mean, the Atlanta used to be a mobile Tier 7 no-fly zone. I mean, tell me what carrier gives a shit about the Atlanta now? All of its AA is long range. It's all those 5-inch gun batteries. It's got a couple of 40 mils, but they're kind of ineffectual. And once aircraft are inside that long range, and it's all flak, so you can dodge flak, and it doesn't even have that. It's the number of flak bursts. You'd think a ship with 16 5-inch guns would generate a lot of flak bursts. You'd think that, and you'd be wrong. The Atlanta's AA is pitiful. It's a shadow of what it should be. And then, of course, there were the changes to the various different, the various different skills where you could get the buff to the range of the guns, providing they were less than 139 millimeters or below. But now that's a destroyer-only skill. So, God.
Yeah, but Atlanta is the one ship that kept its range. Like all the others have been nerfed, but Atlanta has their maximum range that was possible with all the skills is now base range.
It's still I mean, it's still bad. But let's say that you could buff the range to 15 kilometers. You wouldn't hit anything at 15 kilometers with the Atlanta shells anyway. The battle would be over before the first shell had landed.
I think the other one that particularly, like the fact you can't buff AA range anymore, like poor old Texas. So one gimmick is kind of gone essentially. So
Sorry. Cats. Fight.
If I had to choose one, it would probably be my trusty Tirpitz. Very old school, I know, but
yeah,
it's like a comfortable pair of shoes at this point.
I'm quite.
I
fond
do
of
like
the
Benham
Sharmos.
quite a lot as well.
Oh, the Benham's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, torpedo soup. Just try not to get it into a gunfight. I mean, it's not terrible in a gunfight, but it's not good. Even the Shimakaze could probably outgun it. Shimakaze hits really hard.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. People always say, "Oh, you always say that the guns on the Japanese torpedo destroyers are terrible." They're not. Yeah, they are. Just that the ammunition's good. That's the difference.
I mean, the reload is basically what kills those guns, right? All other characteristics are these.
The reload and the turret traverse, because if somebody pops up on the side where your guns aren't pointing, you've got about 12 seconds before you can even enjoy that 8-second reload.
Although I do run turret traverse now on the Shima because I have a second 1-point skill to spare, and the 1-pointers are basically trash anyway.
It's not a bad choice as long as you don't need it for something else. If you got 1 point spare, then the turret traverse skill is actually not that bad on the Shimakaze. No.
Shimakaze is my favorite ship.
Jedi, do you have a favorite?
Of all ships?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Any one ship that you would, it's like, okay, I've been playing for hours and hours. I'm going to play my to end.
I honestly don't know if I would. Like these days, I just jump around. I don't tend to play one ship over and over unless it's a test ship. So I honestly don't know if I could answer that. I could probably come up with a short list of favourite ships, but a single favourite ship?
I'd probably say the Warspite. Just because of what it is. And it's also very good.
It's held up pretty well.
It has. It's despite because there are other ships that you could. The Kavaros has been power creeped to oblivion. But the Warspite is just as good now as when it first saw the light of day 4 years ago. But then again, the game isn't really balanced around tier 6, is it? You're not going to see an awful lot of power creep at tier 6.
Yeah, but what you mostly see is like terrible matchmaking. That used to be better, but these days tier 6, like you just up-tiered a lot.
But hang on, tier 6. Yeah, because you'll never see a tier 4 at tier 6, will you? So the matchmaking tends to work the other way. Because tier 4s only get to fight tier 5s.
Yeah.
Because they did that protected matchmaking for the lower levels.
Yeah, so you're 1 tier down, 2 tiers up.
Yeah, so that did have quite a harsh effect on the tier 6s of the world, which is a shame. But that's the price you pay for protecting the tier 1 players so that they have a nice experience and graduate onto tier 2 players that you can charge money for.
Well, then they put like tier 4 carriers in,
just to spread the misery around. Yes, we'll have carriers at a tier where nobody has any anti-aircraft guns. And even if they did, it wouldn't matter because they're carriers. They seriously need to limit the number of aircraft. Go back. Get rid of the magical fairy dust-powered aircraft-producing factories underneath the flight decks. And honestly, I think that one change would... They might have to buff carriers slightly in other areas to compensate. Slightly. But I honestly believe that would fix most of the problems overnight. If they couldn't just throw aircraft at you, if there was some kind of penalty, if that actually cost them something, I think that would... I'm not expecting you to... Oh, yes, absolutely. I've just thrown this in your lap, so you haven't had a chance to think about it. But maybe the audience could think about it and let us know what they think. But I do believe that would solve a lot of problems with aircraft carriers. Give them a cost for what they do. Everybody else has a cost for what they do. It's called their hit point bar. Carriers don't have to worry about that until they're the last one standing.
Personally, I would just fix anti-air. I feel it's still an insult, and there used to be no fly zones, basically, right? When you were stupid enough to fly into 3 roosters, then all of your planes were gone, right? And wargaming seems to operate under the assumption that no amount of anti-air should be able to prevent the first strike, right? You can have 3 roosters lined up next to each other. They all have defensive fire. They all buff the direction the plane's coming in, and they will get one strike off before the planes are dead, right?
Yes.
He will lose all of his planes, but the one strike has to go through, and I don't understand why, because every class sort of has counters, and you just have to play around them, right? It's not like if you are a destroyer and you sail into a raider, it's not like, oh, well, you have to survive the raider, because, destroyers need to be allowed to sail into raider. No, you're gonna be dead, right? But the carrier doesn't have to learn which ships have good anti-air or not. All anti-air has to be so crap, no matter what target the carrier strikes, it has to be allowed to get a strike off. And the only way that the carrier is punished if he really, it depends on the carrier. Some carriers will never really run out of planes, but some, if they really strike in high anti-air zones the entire game, then at some point they will be low on planes. But it's like, I don't know, it's why aren't we allowed to have anti-air that can actually protect ships?
Yeah.
Well, the whole concept was it's supposed to run down more over time than previously, but that was kind of the thing previously as well. So
yeah,
I don't know.
It all boils down to if you're going to do something, there has to be the cost versus reward has to factor into it, right? If I'm going to get closer than 12 kilometers to that Stalingrad in my Shimakaze, I'm taking a risk here. And there may be a big payoff because I might be able to torpedo all three of them. But the risk, that's the reward. But the risk is the Stalingrad's going to, I'm being spotted, I can't see anything, he's going to fire up his radar. And then I'm going to get nuked. The price I will pay is 3/4 of my health or more. That's the risk versus the reward. There is no risk versus reward for carriers. It's all reward to greater or lesser degree, but there's no risk. Everybody else risks their health bar. Carriers don't risk anything until they're the last one standing. And even then, they're not risking a lot because everybody just shatters on them. It's impossible to set them on fire or flood them. So, yeah, there needs to be something that the carrier has to risk in order to get those attacks off. And the only thing that can be is his aircraft. And yet, by all means, put a carrier in like the Cargo that has a huge air wing, so it's difficult to run them out of aircraft. And that can be the Cargo's gimmick, while simultaneously making the aircraft not as strong to compensate. That's fine, but there needs to be a risk. Otherwise, what's the point? There's no counter to it. Anti-aircraft fire, which is supposed to be the counter to aircraft, clearly isn't, because they're working on the idea that, as you said, the first strike must always get through. And I get that, because there's nothing more frustrating than, you could argue that for Gneisenau captains who have notoriously terrible accuracy and only 6 guns, are often in the situation of laying all their cards on the table and nothing happening. But I get that you don't want that to consistently happen to carrier players. The first strike maybe should always get through, but you should have to pay for it. It should cost you all of your aircraft. And there's no magical fairy dust powered factory underneath your flight deck generating more. You take your risk, you pay your money, you take your chance. And it would encourage smarter carrier gameplay, perhaps more useful carrier gameplay rather than just farm and damage all the time, waiting for the opening. I wouldn't have a problem with that. If the carrier becomes more dangerous at the end of the game because most of your anti-aircraft guns are gone, and your ships are spread further apart, it's fine. It's the way light tanks with autoloaders work in World of Tanks. Exponentially more dangerous the longer they can survive, and there are targets around that they can, take in one reload of their magazine. Not many of them will be good enough to survive that late into the game. So, I don't have a problem with this with carriers whatsoever. I honestly feel they should go back to the old RTS system without having the RTS style of gameplay, but go back to the RTS system of having a limited number of aircraft in their air wing. And if you go through them, tough shit. Learn to play. Get good.
Yeah,
you can tell how much sympathy I have for aircraft carriers.
Yeah.
Oh, but destroyers don't run out of torpedoes and cruisers don't run out of guns. Yeah, and carriers don't run out of health. Destroyers and cruisers do. When they use their torpedoes and their guns, they have to risk their health bar in order to get their successful attacks off. Carriers don't. So make it so that carriers do. Problem solved. Yes. I don't know if you can see her. No, you can't see her. Little kitty.
Well, not so little.
Not at all.
Pretty big kitty.
It's my own Tier 8 Japanese destroyer. Oh.
I mean, looking at her size, her concealment has also increased in the last year or so.
Well, the Akazuki was never the sneakiest destroyer around. But she does have a mean broadside. I think she wants feeding. When she sits over there, she wants treats. She'll be meowing at me. And I probably just didn't hear it because I've got these headphones on.
I mean, that seems to be like a constant state of cats that they want food.
Sam's
Actually,
not too
that
bad, but I don't know if he's ever had to live with other cats, so he's maybe a little more relaxed.
No, it's not that she wants food; she wants treats. Big difference.
Yeah,
okay.
No, she has a different way of letting me know that she wants food. No, she's. I haven't given her treats all day. I mean, I took her out and sat in the garden with her for an hour, but apart from that, I haven't fed her any. Is that right, baby? Yes, that is right, apparently. So yes, I do need to give her something. So where are we at?
Well, we were talking about premiums, but we can we also have been talking a little bit about regular ship lines, I suppose. There have been a lot of old ship lines in the game now these days, and I feel like recently, Wargaming has started to make some small adjustments to older ships, right? But they seem weird, because I feel like there are a lot of old lines in the game that could use some love and use some touching up. But what they've done, with recent changes, basically, I think they have a big dartboard, and they just threw a dart on a ship, and then they flip the coin if it's a buff or a nerf, and then they implemented those changes, right? And then they were like, okay, Mars needs a nerf. What was it like? Leander needs a nerf. Shores gets a buff. It was weird, right?
Yeah, because the forums were awash with people complaining about the Leander, weren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, strongest ship in the game, mostly. It's on the one hand, I like that they look at older ships again, and I mean, there are what has been recently pointed out, that the Japanese line, the Salvage, obviously has incredible armor. So there are lines that definitely could use some love and some touching up, and Wargaming has apparently looked again at older ships, but the changes they made were just completely weird. I don't understand most of them.
I'm afraid I can't comment on any of that because I haven't been paying attention to any changes for. Is this on the dev vlog? I could take a look at it.
I mean, that was a while ago. There was
changes applied to German destroyers, Fenyang, and other ships.
Yeah, that was probably the most recent set of. Yes, that's one where we actually talked about this in a previous. We weren't.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that they are revisiting. Revisiting is the word I was looking for. It's good that they're not just leaving ships to be power creeps into oblivion. But yeah, Leander and Fiji main battery reload time increased 0.3 seconds. Okay, Fiji, maybe I kind of see that because the Fiji's pretty strong. Leander, it's only got 6 guns. I mean, why? Who was complaining that they were getting owned by Leanders?
I like the Lebrecht Mars. For example, what I don't see anything here is for example, Japanese, one of the oldest lines in there that is you don't really see many Japanese cruisers anymore.
Certainly in that set of balance changes, not a single change to any of the Japanese ships. I guess the Zhao is fine after all.
Definitely. I mean, it has those strong torpedoes and great armor.
Yeah. Let's just not talk about the torpedo firing angles.
It's definitely it's not even that old of a line, but the British heavy cruisers, I wouldn't be surprised if they were due a buff or two. I mean, there's certainly individual ships on probably quite a lot of the lines you could pick out, but
yeah, British heavy cruisers, their AP is way too useful. We should probably nerf it.
Yeah.
I've just realised.
I think the Pan-Asian destroyers, some of them definitely feel left behind.
I've just realised, by the way, that from a certain angle, because most of my beard is white, but there are occasional streaks of grey still in it where there is some colour. But from certain angles, if you're looking at me just out of the corner of your eye, I just noticed. Wait until the internet gets a hold of that one.
They would never
Sorry,
turn this into a meme.
Yeah, we're talking about balance changes, but yeah, that seems kind of. I mean, on the one hand, yes, it's good that they are still revisiting older ships, but on the other hand, what? Why? Let's have a look. 10.5 balance changes. Very little. Increase the firing range of the Flint to 12.4 kilometers. Changes to Hyuga and Christopher Colombo. So, yeah, not exactly revisiting old ships.
Well, except for the Flint, I guess.
Yeah.
It's something that I've started basically somewhat recently, where it looks like they are looking at older ships again and doing something. But what confuses me is what they are doing, because there is, and I mean, it's not like Wargaming gives you a lot of explanation, or any explanation for any of that stuff. But you just shake your head, because about like half of them at least make no sense or go like in the different direction than you'd think they're doing, and they are not really ships that are overperforming or that afraid of or anything, right? And a lot of ships.
Our latest one, I'm looking at the list of ships, and okay, there are some changes to some of the newer ships, like the Angela Merkel, and the Felix Schultz, but the Leberecht Mars, what? Ben Yang, Queen Elizabeth, Monarch, Leander.
I mean, the Fen Yang buff, I'm definitely not complaining about that.
Yeah, that's definitely. It's a for any case of anybody who doesn't have the development blog up. It's a reload buff, which is nice. And there's a buff on the turret rotation for the Queen Elizabeth, which it's a very, very substantial buff. It's like nearly 20 seconds faster. That's great. It's fantastic. Monarch needs all the help it can get, so giving it an extra 500 meter firing range. Nobody's going to say no to that. But decreasing the reload, or increasing the reload on the Leander? What? Yeah. Really? Was the Jervis doing so well that it needed its stealth nerfed?
Yeah, I mean,
was the Baltimore such a threat? Was the Baltimore such a threat to destroyers that it needed its radar decreased by 3 seconds? Was the Shoals doing so badly that it needed to get 500 meter? I mean, I'm sure. Then again, yeah. I mean, the Shoals kind of needs to be kiting at extreme range in order to live. So fair enough, an extra 500 meters on its range. But I mean, some of those changes are like, who asked for this?
I mean, I think
you're right. When they say we're doing balance changes, they say what the changes are. They never say why.
Did actually specifically ask about this in the CC Discord, and I think the answer was along the lines of it would just be too much effort to detail the reasoning behind every small change.
That's fine. They must have a reason. I'm just struggling to envisage a reality in which the Leander needed a nerf.
You see, when I look at it, I feel like about 50% of the changes go in the right direction, 50% like more in the wrong direction. That's why I feel like they flipped the coin. And how they chose the ships, probably like a dartboard. I feel like it's the most logical conclusion that fits the facts.
They're just putting all the names of the ships in a hat, saying, right, which ones are we going to do something with? We'll figure out what later, but we need to make it look as if we're constantly reviewing everything. So just grab a handful of names. That'll do. Right, fine, whatever. Yeah, that's the best.
It's the most likely explanation. Then they flip a coin in which direction, right? And it's like, damn it. Looks like we're nerfing Leander. Well, maybe they just wrote Leander and Fiji on the same piece of paper. That's why you're getting the same nerf.
Well, Leander, Fiji, they both have HMS. It's easy to get them mixed up. I don't know. Yeah, really, really bizarre. I mean, some of those changes you can see. Okay, fair enough. I mean, the 72-second 180-degree turret rotation for the Queen Elizabeth is diabolical. Yeah. I think that's what the Warspites originally was, and that got buffed 3 years ago. So that's like, how did you forget to do that to the Queen Elizabeth too? So, well done for remembering and eventually doing it. Fine. But some of those other changes, okay. I mean, most of them are buffs. I'm not going to complain.
I feel like the cynic in me is like the Queen Elizabeth was just supposed to be a worse Warspite, so people buy the Warspite, right?
Well, it
So,
is a worse Warspite.
Yeah,
It
but
used
now
to have
they
much
don't.
better AA. It used to be one of the best AA ships at tier 6.
That's right. But now AA is irrelevant, so it has no advantage. I think it's got. That was it. The Queen Elizabeth had better AA. The Warspite had better secondaries and better Sigma, but not by much. And that was it. But now it's got nothing. It's got worse Sigma and apparently also worse turret rotation, and AA is irrelevant. So they had to do something. So they finally gave it the buff that the Warspite had 3 years ago.
Or maybe they've just figured that they don't sell Warspites anymore a lot, so they're like, okay, we can now give the Queen Elizabeth this thing, right?
I shall have to get on my podium and do something about that. Buy more Warspites. Just don't play them. There's only one Warspite captain around here. Oh, you can play your Warspite if you make me the captain. Otherwise, no. I still think that's amazing, by the way. The fact that I'm in the game. And I get everything wrong in the game as well. That's great. Anyway, enough about me.
Yeah, so Cheddar mentioned earlier, like the Pan-Asian destroyer is also something you don't really see a lot in the game, and something that I feel like they've just, I don't know, ignored for a while. They had like they nerfed, what was it, the tier 10 like a few years ago? Then everybody was like, now the tier 10 is shit, and one was like, yeah.
I'm pretty sure the Chungmu had a nerf in the not too distant past as well.
Yes, but for a long time there was no point at all in going to the Yu Yang from the Chungmu because it had better torpedoes, better stealth, better guns, better speed. The only thing it didn't have was the radar. And there was the tier 9. It's one of those few examples, because normally what they try to do is they make at least the tier 9, usually the tier 7 as well, really shit, so that you're encouraged to burn through free XP in order to grind through them. But the Chungmu was the exception. It was really, really good. And then they nerfed the Yu Yang and gave people even less reason to go to the tier 10. And then, yeah, you're right, a couple of years passed, they thought, we should probably do something about the Chungmu. Nobody seems to be playing Yu Yangs anymore, so they made the Chungmu. I can't remember what it was. I think they made the guns reload slightly slower. It wasn't enough to make it a bad ship. It was just one of those bizarre nerfs. I mean, it's the Chungmu, because you never see Chungmus. I was going to say, oh no, I saw some Pan-Asians. Oh no, actually it wasn't. It was the Asashio. It was Asashios trying to torpedo destroyers with deep water torpedoes, not Chungmus or Yu Yangs in the battles that I saw. No. I saw deep water torpedoes and just assumed, oh yeah, Pan-Asian. I did no, they were Asashios. No, you're right. You never see Pan-Asian destroyers anymore, which is a shame because some of them ain't bad.
I mean, I think they nerfed them back in the day with the reason because they had radar and that was too strong or something, but they had no trouble adding more like radar destroyers that are better in the game since then.
Yeah, exactly. Look at all the US Navy radar destroyers now. Well, I say all, there's what, 2? Is it Kidd?
No,
I can't remember.
Kidd is...
What's the
black? The black has radar.
That's it, the black, yeah. And there you got the Erland.
Smerland and tier 10 radar.
Yeah, I know there's a tier 9 that has it as well.
Orcan, I think, has a radar.
But yeah, it's not exactly unusual to see a destroyer with radar these days, but the Yu Yang still kind of festers in oblivion.
You have to be basically challenging, like deliberately wanting to challenge yourself to take that thing out, essentially.
Yeah.
There are better choices on every level.
Even the Z52. That's another one, because the Z52 hasn't gotten any worse. I mean, there was a time when the Z52 was the preferred destroyer in competitive. Kings of the Sea, it was always, we got this, and 2 Z52s. Because of the, what's the right word? I want to say synchronicity. It's the wrong word, but you'll know what I mean, between their hydro duration and the reload of their torpedoes, which matched up very, very nicely. So you could charge smoke screens and kill anything in it without them knowing anything other than, oh shit, I've been spotted. the Z52s used to rule roost, and they haven't really changed the Z52. But nobody plays them because everything else has gotten better, or new things have arrived that are better, or other things have happened that that negate some of the Z52's strengths. If there's a candidate for a review, Z52, Khabarovsk, take a look at them. Although you could argue, look at the French destroyers. They do everything that Khabarovsk does, except better. There's another ship that suffered from power creep.
Oh, yeah. I think the Z52 mostly got phased out by the prevalence of raiders, especially long-range raiders. Because it's a Z52, like your ship overall isn't that great, but the greatness comes from the hydro and smoke combination, and especially when there are caps, right? You can go into the cap and often hydro the entire cap. And that's very strong. But it's only strong if no raider shows up, because you can't sit there and hydro the cap if you're running from radar all the time.
And now let's count all of the battle cruisers with radar that have been introduced since, plus the extra line of American cruisers with radar. Yeah. Power creep. It's a natural feature. It's going to happen. And it is good that they are revisiting existing ships that have been around a while and tweaking them here and there. But they nerfed the Leander? What? What about the Z52? What about the Khabarovsk? Ships that need it. Okay, they gave the Queen Elizabeth the turret rotation buff, but they nerfed the Leander? What? On what planet does that make? Oh, whatever. Anyway, maybe you can see where their priorities lie. All of those Leanders, seal clubbing all those poor tier 8s. Yeah, anyway. So moving on swiftly.
There was a question for you from chat, Jingles. Do you still play operations on Sunday with TC3? And what are your favorite ships, probably in operations?
Occasionally. Often on Sunday, I'm kind of busy. And TC doesn't do operations every week anymore either, which is a shame. And of course, the reason behind it, of course, is because nobody plays operations.
Yeah.
This is why Wargaming removed a whole bunch of operations and then haven't put any of them back and aren't developing anymore, and are removing the ability to complete missions in operations so that they can say nobody plays operations, justifying why there are no new operations in the game and why they've removed a whole bunch of operations and not put them back. They've got this nice little circular argument going. They continue to refuse to support operations, and they actively make operations worse, and so that they can say nobody plays them. Yeah, because of you fuckers. Can I say that? Is that okay? We're going to have to bleep that out? Sorry, touchy subject.
It's okay, we will edit it out.
Okay, yeah. We'll edit that out later, don't worry. So, yeah, they've got this nice little circular argument going, which is bullshit. But, wargaming, what are you going to do? So, yes, I do still okay. I played last week, actually. Was it last week or the week before? I can't remember. But, when the circumstances allow, I do enjoy it. Because it's nice just to... Because when you're playing operations, you're not you've got time to have a chat, with everybody. Because we go in with a full division of 7. So we're all on TeamSpeak. We're all talking to each other. And it's more about giving each other shit rather than actually, trying... Because we've played the ball so many times, we've gotten down to a fine art now, especially Narai, where we set ourselves the challenge. I don't know if those of you listening to this who have played Operation Narai, but there's a bunch of transport ships trying to exit and escape out of the southern end of the map. And usually people fight over each other for the opportunity to get down there and farm damage on them because they're defenseless transports. What you have to do is take care of one destroyer escort, and then it's party time. But it got so boring doing that we decided we'll try to do it in the least likely ship possible. So I went down there in a Nelson, and I did it. I got them all. And it got to the stage where we were trying to come up with the most ridiculous ship suited for hunting down a bunch of fast-moving transports, and challenging ourselves to try to do it successfully just to make things interesting. But you can do stuff like that in operations. It's a lot of fun. Unfortunately, Wargaming could refuse to support the game mode, making up bullshit and lies in order to justify why the game mode shouldn't be supported, when they could just be honest and say, because we don't want to. Unfortunately, that's just the way things go. But yeah, I do occasionally. If he's doing it on any given Sunday, and if I'm not otherwise engaged on any given Sunday, then yeah, I'll join in. It's always a lot of fun. The stream seems to enjoy it too. I now have a small cat. Well, not very small. Brushing my leg with her tail. She definitely wants something. What's up, little girl? Oh, she's hungry.
Oh, I mean, we've been going for a bit, so it might be a natural time to.
Oh yeah, we've once again been a bit longer than well, I mean, we've given up on our initial time frame anyway. But...
Yeah.
I blame that Aiton. He started going on about Path of Exile. It's all his fault.
Oh yeah, definitely. It went all downhill from there.
Oh, right, I need to think about some food as well for myself. It's way too hot to cook. I'm probably going to order something.
Ice cream, that's the solution. Ice cream for dinner.
Oh yeah.
Have some Haagen-Dazs in the freezer.
And then a cold beer with it.
Yes, unfortunately, I've already finished this one off, so I'm going to need a refill. Look, I'm thirsty, all right? I'm not proud of it. I've got some proper Budweiser in the fridge. Anyway, I guess that's it then. So thanks for having me along. It was really, really fun. And as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.
Oh yeah, thanks everyone for watching us. And you guys all know where to find Jingles anyway. So I hope you enjoyed it. And see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.